I do feel that there are some spiritual mandates on the church in election time. I'm not going to control your vote. I'm not going to ask you who you voted for, but I am, without waving a banner with some politician's name on it, I am going to exhort people. This is what's at stake. This is what. Here's the bigger picture.
So in America, we have the privilege of having a representative government. So we, which I love better than straight democracy. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
So, you get straight democracy on Facebook in some ways, but we get if people even watch the Facebook anymore. But the representative government. So we have an opportunity to vote. How are you thinking through that vote, and then maybe the dialogue that we have with each other while we're holding positions? Because we've talked about this. Bethel has Democrats and Republicans and independents in it. So we're a little bit like, whenever an election year rolls around, we're like, all right, let's be good to each other. And sometimes we and sometimes we make mistakes, and sometimes we send sideways messages to each other we have to clean up. And so that's part of being family. And, if you're going to have a church of whatever, 6,000 adults or something, or more, 8,000, then you're going to have these sorts of things. What's on your heart?
Well, I've been told that something like 25% of Christians vote.
Okay, sure that's not fake news, Bill? Or just kidding.
No, I don't know what to say.
Your point is taken.
A very low percentage, which means the righteous influence for values is not being expressed. And I'm going to call it a cop-out. The cop-out is, I only have one vote, and it really means very little. That's not true for a believer. Every act of obedience of a believer releases presence and power. There is no such thing as a single solitary act that is insignificant. We have to re-identify who we are and what our responsibility is. We've got a responsibility to pray. Don't tell me you pray for the government and then you don't vote. Your prayer is meaningless to me. Pray and act. There's prayer and obedience. And we have a responsibility as citizens. Vote values, not personalities. I'm not going to, I don't get up and tell people how to vote, but I hope that we teach a lot on what is important in the kingdom. And each party that's represented in any given election usually represents part of what we think is important. So that's why we have such divided interest within about a believers. They're not voting anti-Christ, they're voting for specific values.
Yeah, well said. When you say vote values, you're like, some of the values, these are the ones I would die to protect or spend my life advancing, and other folks would be like, well, these are the ones I would die to protect and spend my life advancing.
So I want to respect you for that reason, but I also want to be able to talk through, because I do feel that there are some spiritual mandates on the church in election time. I'm not going to control your vote. I'm not going to ask you who you voted for, but I am, without waving a banner with some politician's name on it, I am going to exhort people. This is what's at stake. This is here's the bigger picture. Because sometimes we as leaders get exposed to things behind the scenes where we know the cost of an election. I don't mean the financial cost. I mean the implications of an election, of a given politician, of whatever it might be, that we know because we've been exposed to things behind the scene that this is crucial. And so I'm going to do my best to encourage people to think through these things, value these things, but also to realize that a vote is important. It's an act of obedience. It's an act of obedience. And whenever that takes place, something is released that is very, very valuable for us as believers. And I would love, in California, for example, where we are, there are so many believers here, but there are so many that are silent. I'm not asking them to, to march down the street. I'm just saying, be responsible. Be responsible. Vote values. Think through family life, through this, through that, and vote accordingly. And but don't sit silent. Don't not vote and then just say, well, my vote is insignificant. That's not true. That's wrong. Yeah, it's wrong.
How about the way that we talk to each other? If I was to put it away in a particular way, I'd say we give ourselves permission to be disrespectful because it's an election or something like that. somehow we have a core value that honor affirms value, and yet sometimes in these places we're going to put that aside, and here we go. This is politics, and so we'll try to put honor on the shelf, during those times, instead of listening with honor, speaking with honor as we're disagreeing with honor.
Yeah, that's scary. Mm-hmm. It's scary. I don't mind dishonoring an ideal.
Okay.
If I feel it is in opposition to kingdom.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But I don't want to associate that idea with this person and then dishonor them, disrespect them.
That makes sense, yeah.
We have to be careful, even in talking about political issues. There are a lot of issues that are absolutely immoral. They're not gray. They're obviously evil. I have to be careful that when I address those things, that I'm not shooting at a politician, shooting at, spiritually speaking, verbally, I should say, a personality. Because our battle is not against flesh and blood. We can't reduce it to a issue of human nature. We've got to deal with these things on a much higher plane.
And so that would be maybe speaking about a politician or somebody running for office. What's in your heart for the way we communicate to each other as Christians, or Christians with non-believers? Or
well, I think you need to have relational equity. If you don't have relational equity with a person, don't pick the tough subject until you can develop it. Show them some honor and respect. Develop some sort of relational equity where you can say something that's more. There are certain people in our environment I won't say certain things to. They're 100% true, but I won't say it because it triggers them. And we don't have the relational equity. So I'm going.
I imagine many people on Instagram or Facebook, we don't have that relational equity.
That's interesting.
All my Twitter followers, yes.
Yeah, that's a cruel world. That's a very cruel world.
So in some ways, would you have that same thing as realizing that you don't have relational equity with some of those folks that you're trying to communicate with, and that potentially is going to be costly?
Yeah, I don't engage much. I've seen twice in all the years on Facebook, Instagram, many years, many posts. I've seen twice in all these years where a hard subject, somebody reacted and communication followed, and there was reconciliation or healing. I've seen it twice out of
lots of episodes.
Horrible things.
Yeah.
And it's just not worth it. Communication is rough anyway. And when you have it in a text, you don't have facial expression, you don't have tone of voice, you don't have body language, you don't have any of the things that maybe if you and I were having a hard conversation and I could see the sincerity in your eyes, it would make listening to a comment you have to make to me a lot easier. And that's just relationship. Text, Facebook, all that stuff doesn't happen. You just have people throwing out barbs that affirms the people who agree with you and drives away the people who don't. And it's just very little. Very little is accomplished. So I don't know. I try to go into that area less and less all the time. So occasionally I'll post something just to hopefully to make people think.
People love cat videos, just so you...
I don't. And I don't have any.
Really?
Yeah, I don't have any, so I won't be posting any.
I still respect you.
You still do, yeah.
You probably haven't seen some of the cat videos. I've had the privilege of seeing them, so that could be part of the reason.
That's true. That's true. I can promise you.
All right, after this is over, I'll show you some.
Oh, yeah, thanks.